We're going to create a soft, flexible handle for a small spoon like this one. To create the model, we'll use a web-based program called Tinkercad. So on a web browser on your computer, go to tinkercad.com, tinkercad.com, click Login, click Students with Class Code, click in the box and enter the class code that your instructor gave you. Then click Go to My Class and click Join with Nickname. Type in the nickname that your instructor assigned to you and click That's Me. On the left-hand side, click Classes, click OTS 210, and click the handle class activity. Finally, click Copy and Tinker. These are the components that we're going to use to create our handle. And we're looking straight down on the components from the top view, and you can tell that by looking at the orientation cube in the top left corner. If I click and drag that cube, then I can rotate around the work plane in 3 dimensions. You can also click each face of the cube to move around that way. And on a Mac, you can hold down the Control key on your keyboard and then click and drag on your mouse pad to move around in 3 dimensions. The work plane is divided up into X, Y, Z coordinates. From left to right is the X axis. From front to back is the Y axis. And up and down is the Z axis. So you want to keep that in mind because we're creating a 3-dimensional model. We need to think in 3 dimensions. These are the components that we'll use to create the spoon handle that we saw a moment ago. And we've taken measurements of our physical spoon so we know how long and how wide we want the handle to be. And I've indicated all of those dimensions in these notes that are attached to each piece. So if I click on the note for the main part of the handle, the green piece, you can see that that's using an hyperboloid and it's giving you some numbers. On the right-hand side, we'll click the magnifying glass to search for that shape. You only have to type in the first part, hyper, and it should show up here. This is the green one. So we'll click and drag a copy of that shape onto the work plane. And you'll notice that it looks different from what we want to end up with, but we can control the outer radius and also the inner radius, that middle part, so we can make it go in further or out, bow out, which is what we're going to want to do. And for the dimensions, we'll look at the note. It says 80, 10, 15, and 60. So over on the settings here, we'll type in 80, 10 is fine, third one is 15, and then 60 at the bottom, and enter. And we'll end up with a shape that's the same as the template. And we can click and drag it over to compare and see that, yes, indeed, it's just about the same. Click the X on the right-hand side to get rid of the search box. Next, we'll create the bottom piece, and we'll click on the note to see what that is. It's a cylinder, so we'll go over to the right and click on the orange cylinder and drag that out. And we note the settings 64, 0, and 1. So I'll type in 64, 0, and 1 are fine. Now, just so you know, I'm going to focus in here for a minute, and I'm going to use the side slider in the options to show you what's happening. If I slide all the way to the left, you can see that there are 12 sides. So this is a very rough, low resolution shape. But as I increase the number of sides all the way up to the maximum of 64, then we essentially have a round shape. I'll zoom back out. I have 64, 0, and 1, and then it gives me an X, Y, and Z dimensions. So I'll click on any one of these white boxes, and I'll choose the X coordinate and type in 50, enter. And I'll choose the Y dimension and type in 50 and enter. And then finally 2 in this up and down, the Z coordinate. If you're confused about which one of these boxes is the Z, you can rotate a little bit, and now you can clearly see as I hover over this white box below the black arrow, you can see the up and down dimension. So I'll click on that to select it, and then type in what the number is, and type the number 2, and hit enter. So I have that flat plate. And if I drag it over, you can compare and see that it's about the same. I'll just move this back here Doesn't matter if it's centered, we're going to center it later. But I will point out that here, this is the original combination of shapes that I used, along with a hole in the middle for the spoon. But if you look at the printed model, you'll see that was a weak point where the base joined the handle and it tore easily. So we want to add some reinforcement there to make it stronger. And that's what we're going to use this shape for, this cone. So we'll go over to the right, click on the cone and drag it out, and we'll make note of the settings that we need to change. 0, 18, change 10 to 18, and then change the height to 28, and the sides to 64. Okay, just click and drag over just to compare. Yep, that's about the same. So again, I'll move this roughly over here. And again, don't worry about centering the shapes right now. We'll do that as the last step. But just note that we've added some thickness here to the bottom, so it'll be much stronger. And then the last step is we need to cut a hole through all of these shapes into which our spoon handle will fit. And so if we look at that piece, that's again a cylinder, 64, 0, and 1. But notice it has gray lines on it. Now, it doesn't matter if you choose this cylinder, which is the one with gray lines. If I drag it out, you'll see that it's a hole. But if I accidentally drag out the orange cylinder, note up here that we can turn it from a solid into a hole. So they're the same thing. Noting the settings, 64, 0, 1, and then the dimensions, 10 millimeters in the X dimension. Y is going to be 4. And I'll zoom in a little bit so I can see the height. Whoops, I gotta make note of what it is first. 100 in the Z. So we'll click on that box and then type in 100. The 100 here is an arbitrary number. We just wanted something taller than the handle itself so that we could clearly see the shape when we're moving it around. Now for centering these shapes, it's easiest to look at it from the top. So you're looking straight down, and then anywhere outside of the models, click and drag an invisible box to select all of those shapes. And on the menu, the top right, hover over and click the icon for align, and you'll see these aligning dots. So we're going to click the middle dot to align all of the shapes centered from side to side and centered from front to back. And you'll see that those dots are grayed out after that has been accomplished. If we rotate around, we can verify that everything's nice and center and click off the shape again. Click and drag to select all the shapes once more. And in the menu bar, hover over the icon that says group, and we're going to click that. It'll take a minute for all the shapes to group, and once they do, you'll see that they all turn the same color. So we have one solid color and one solid shape. Now I can verify that the hole is there by rotating around and looking through. There it is coming out the bottom. It's also helpful too if you click on the color on the right-hand side, and on the bottom right, click transparent, so you get kind of an X-ray view into your shape. And you can see that that's the desired shape. So I can move back from transparent. Now we'll rename our file, SL handle. On the upper right-hand side, click Export and STL. Now when I look at my Downloads folder, you can see the model that we just created. The next step will be to slice this file, convert the model into layers and instructions for the 3D printer to follow so that it can reproduce this shape in the real world.